Hi everyone, we are here at the Giornate del Cinema Muto Pordenone Silent Film Festival, and our guest for today's episode of Beyond the Film Reels is Camille Blot-Wellens, who is, I would say, a very prestigious for us guest, and she is a film archivist, researcher and historian. The questions for Camille today will be made by our student Matteo Alocci, who is currently writing his thesis for the MA. He's indeed a student at our MA in Music and Performing Arts.
We could start with the most recent achievements. Just 5 months ago, the FIAF adopted a revised Code of Ethics after a 3-year work done by the FIAF Code of Ethics revision project, of which you were a coordinator. Could you tell us more about the birth of this project and the process?
Yes, the project was initiated by the former General Secretary of FIAF, Michael Lobenstein, because it was obvious that all the change in our field, as well as in society in general, made it mandatory to revise our Code of Ethics and to reflect worries and our principles. So it was a long process because I really wanted it to be as democratic, as inclusive as possible. So we started with the executive committee to see a bit which direction we wanted and how we wanted to develop the project. We presented it to the General Assembly of FIAF in 2022. And from then we tried to open consultation to the whole community online. So we allowed everyone who wanted to participate and give ideas. And after we created a smaller group, but it was still around 15 persons who participated to 5 what we call brainstorming sessions, each one with a thematic, because for me it was important to forget about the former code in order to get free of it, in order to be able to formulate new ideas. So this was quite a long process. After that, we presented the result of this session in Mexico in 2023. And we created a smaller group of editors, 5 persons, to actually write the new codes based on the feedback and all this discussion we had. We presented the result of that in 2024 in Bangkok. And from there, we can correct or modify some things and submit it to regional groups, because it was also important that all the region could give their feedback, which was extremely useful. To the commission, you know that FIAF has 3 commissions: cataloging, technical commission, and programming. And we could finalize the text, and it was voted on May 1st, 2025 in Montreal. So that's why it was quite a long process, but it was important to really, yes, make it as democratic and open as possible.
In your experience, how much has the digital turn affected film restoration and curation, and what are the new ethical challenges it has posed?
To start with, I think that ethical challenges were always there. I think that, in my opinion, the digital turn in terms of methodology and approach was a huge drawback, because all these principles and methodology that we spent years developing and formulating, they were kind of forgotten from one day to the other. That said, we always had ethical problems. Digital didn't bring ethical problems. They were always there, except that photochemical technology did not allow so much. The tools were not as easy. The manipulation was not that easy. So this is, for me, one of the main aspects. The other aspect is that as long as you are photochemical, you stay in a kind of technical environment. Digital made that once you scan your film, your element, you are not there anymore. You took it somewhere else, and you can get rid completely of how the film was made. So you can treat all the films the same way because it's not anymore part of its environment. When you see or you read text about, I don't know if you know this little documentary about Il Gattopardo. Mm-hmm. You have the Technicolor lab in London, you have the filters, they are in the environment. When you scan it, it's elsewhere, so you lose that. And on top of this, another aspect is the expectation the so-called expectation from the audience, because I still want someone to tell me that these are the expectations of the audience, that make that we treat all films the same way. We grade them for cinema as we would grade them for TV, kind of. We are flattening history of cinema completely. All films look the same. Go to answer the expectation of an audience. But so these are extremely problematic ethical aspects for me, because cinema has a history and you can't pretend it has not. And what digital made is that we started thinking, oh, the poor one, they would have liked to do that, but then at the period they could not, but now we can do it, so let's do it for them. But why?
Like
why
the
not?
Colorization that people do on YouTube, for instance, freely without thinking about
yes, that. For instance, but even sound. Okay, we are in a silent film festival, but sound, they are changing all the sound to create another experience. Mm-hmm. But so we are going to hear the film all the same way, whether it's made in 1940, 1960, 1980. So we are completely flattening the experience you have. The color are the same, the sound is the same. We don't dare to grade so much because if not, we are going to lose detail, but lose what? Because technology negatives were never screened. Negative was work material in order to achieve a print. The print was what was screened. And now with digital, we kind of introduce this idea that we shouldn't reach the print. Now that we have the possibility of seeing the negative. But so this is for me an extremely complicated question. But once again, it didn't start with digital. A lot of things were done also with photochemical. So, but digital made it easier, and it's completely took out the work of its technological context and took it elsewhere. And this is for me the most problematic, because we forget where it comes from, somehow.
From the Filmoteca Spagnola to the Cinémathèque Française to the Svenska Institutet, in collaborating with institutions from different countries, have you noticed differences in the approach on film preservation?
I would say that maybe for this question, the when is more relevant than the where.
Okay.
Because when I worked at Filmoteca Española, it was quite a long time ago, so we were photochemical. When I arrived at Cinémathèque Française, we were also, we were in the same territory. But what was very, very strong in Madrid is that the department was called Research Department. And this was decided by its head, Alfonso del Amo. So it was a continuous brainstorming session. We were always discussing what possibilities we have, what can we do, how we should treat that. So it was extremely strong, the need of research, which is what you don't always find, in a way, in other archives. So when I arrived at the Cinémathèque Française, I tried also to encourage the research. And in Stockholm, I was also very lucky to be allowed to make research. So, every time I can't say that there was a very big difference. There are differences. For instance, in Sweden, there is this approach that what was digitally born should be digitally preserved, kept, because it's the nature of the film, while in other archives, they prefer to get a film to shoot on film, to keep it on film, which is different in Sweden. So you do have different approach, but it's more in general, it's more the when than the where, because it's also depend on the tools. But yeah, in Sweden it's slightly different. But what was very specific in Madrid was the importance given to research. And this is something I could find again in Switzerland, because I work with the Cinémathèque Suisse on restoration project. But the head of the heritage at the Cinémathèque Suisse, it's Caroline, who also started in Madrid. So we have the same kind of. There is one thing I forgot about the digital turn, if I can come back.
Yes,
Of course.
of course.
One extremely important aspect for me is that, unfortunately, the digital made our authorities to forget about the storage, about the collection, and I'm afraid that it's getting harder and harder to get money to preserve our storage facilities. It depends on institution, but digital, it's harder in general to get money if you don't digitize. But if we don't keep our collection, we'll have nothing to digitize. And this, for me, is the biggest danger. And we have had echo from archives saying, oh, now they ask us to destroy our collection once they are digitized. So this is, I'm afraid, a very, very big problem that we'll have to make sure that we preserve our collection, because we will need them always.
Film identification is an essential phase in film restoration, and much of your publications aim to guide archivists in this process. Among the case studies you worked on, is there a film that stuck with you, whether for its peculiarities or its rarity, or the eureka moment of a discovery?
Yeah, I had quite a few eureka moments. I'm working
That's
for
nice.
25 years, so yeah, maybe one of the biggest one was in Madrid, when I worked on a collection of early films, and there was a group of films that were clearly produced by the same producer, but it was extremely hard to identify the production company, and this was really, I remember this moment of extreme emotion at the library. Another very moving moment was what is at the origin of the session that will be screened on Saturday. I must say that another aspect I like very much is that I collaborate with a colleague in France from the Fondation Pathé, Anne Gourdet-Marès, who is in charge of the apparatus. And we like to confront the film, what I see on the material, with the apparatus. And it's always extremely gratifying and interesting. It's a kind of magic to suddenly understand exactly where come from, what produced what you see on the film material. But I would say that maybe what I remember most is the ones that are not identified. And I go on. I never stop. I mean, sometimes I identify film 5, 6, 7 years after. These are the ones that remain with me, because I know that until they are identified, it would be harder to convince to preserve them, to screen them. So, but yeah, these are maybe my...
Hopefully soon they will be identified.
Yes, I mean, I never give up. And sometimes really it takes me 5 or 6 years, because it depends. 2 years ago, maybe I could finally identify a film that I had seen in 2015.
Wow.
Could you tell us what brought you to work in the film archive and restoration field, and what advice would you give to those who want to pursue this career?
I have quite an unusual profile in a way, because my first formation is historian, but medievist historian, specialized in Byzantine history.
Oh, wow.
To do with film.
There were no films.
No.
No. So I arrived in the field of film archives with a quite strong background in history, which probably shaped a lot my approach and made that some research, like of course Brown's research, Harold Brown's, made really sense for me because it's this kind of archaeological approach to film material. So after, I guess a lot has to do with encounters. I was extremely lucky. The person I met on the way, a lot is about this, the people you meet, because it's still a work, a profession where you really learn by doing. You will have base, theoretical base, but after you really need to learn by doing. So the people you meet, the experience you have is really what will help you. Now, if I have an advice to give to young person who want to work in film restoration, it's really to watch as many 35 millimeter of film on film as they can, because it's extremely important to have this experience when you restore films. You need to go to the film, and if you haven't trained your eyes, then you don't reach it. And this emotion that film gives you, and what we are supposed to go and recover when we restore, we can't do it if we don't have felt it ourselves. So I think that this is really something extremely important and it's what I say to my students. If you want to work in film restoration, every time there is a print, you go. And when you have a vintage print, you go even more, because this is the main tool. After I had the chance to work with Luciano Vergata in Spain, who was specialized in more now films.
Yes.
And he gave me two advice. The first one is to choose a topic and keep it. Choose a moment of history, choose a film director, and keep it, and go on working on it. Because for me, restoration is linked with research. You can't restore really if you don't know, and so you need to do research. And that's why I'm still researching early cinema for 25 years, and I'm still learning, and I will never stop learning. So this is really, it's important to understand that after I don't restore only film from early period, of course, because I need to restore other films, but the consciousness of what knowledge and research give you in the moment of restoring is something that you keep in your approach after. So I think that we do wrong when we dissociate research and restoration. So this is really something that it's important to do. The other advice he gave me, which was really good, was if you are convinced, if you love something and you think it should be restored, you will have to defend it, and you will have to convince the other of its importance. We restore because the restorer needs to be convinced of the reason to restore. I think that this is very important. But I'm freelance. I'm not employee so my approach is maybe different. But these are the advice: to know what you want, to know what you love, and why you do it, and what you want to achieve.
One last question. We talked earlier about the Lumiere program that will be presented next Saturday and that you have curated. What were the key criteria or ideas that shaped your selection of films?
We haven't really selected the film, they were already in a program. The idea is more, it's really a tribute to film preservation, actually. I don't know if you have seen a bit what it's about. The program, it's Lumiere films that were duplicated in the early 50s in Sweden, directly from the original negative, which was extremely rare at the period. So I was really, and the element that is at the origin of the print, which is print and no digital, completely photochemical, was made by contact. I don't know how familiar you are, but it's
Yes.
Lumiere
The-
negative
yes.
were duplicated.
You put
and-
that on
yes,
one against the other.
the
And
best you can in 1953. We, from this element that had been miscatalogued, so we didn't know really it existed in the collection, we have made a new, the Swedish Film Institute made a new dupe negative by contact and a new print by contact. It means that everything from the Lumiere negative original had been made by contact. And it's one of the most beautiful preservation of a Lumiere film I've seen in my life. And it's also remind us that film restoration is technical skill on one hand, the capacity of duplicating, but it's also a knowledge and understanding of historical material. And this, for me, is more beautiful than probably whatever preservation you can do today of Lumiere films. So it's a tribute to film preservation. This was a bit the point of this program, to have the opportunity on this extremely beautiful big screen to see this extremely beautiful print.
Thank you, Camille, for sharing your experience with us today. And thanks to Matteo for your brilliant questions. And please stay tuned for other episodes of this podcast about professions of film.